Welcome to today's webinar program, Accounts Payable Imaging and Workflow Solution, brought to you by the Accounts Payable channel and Hyland Software. My name is Kelly Pollard and I will be your conference moderator for today's program. The program will take us roughly 60 minutes. We are going to listen to a great in-depth AP Automation case study discussion and will conclude with a short Q&A session. We have asked a few members to submit their AP Automation questions beforehand, and we'll try to address those at the end of this presentation. If you have any other questions for any one of the presenters, please email those to amotuz@theapchannel.com. And we're lucky to have with us today Becca Toth and Paul Smith. Paul serves as the manager of the Accounts Payable Department at Rockwell Automation, located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Becca serves as Industry Marketing Manager for the commercial vertical for Hyland Software, the Westlake, Ohio-based developer of OnBase. Becca's primary responsibilities include leading strategic marketing activities to effectively position Hyland in the commercial industry. Paul, the audience is now yours. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. The agenda for today's discussion is to look at Rockwell Automation as a quick overview of the company. We're also going to take a look at the accounts payable function within Rockwell. We'll discuss some of the project objectives, look at our timeline for this deployment, and then also cover some of the process highlights, how this application integrates with SAP. SAP is our primary ERP system, and it was a key focus to be able to integrate with SAP. We'll cover some of the key benefits from this project, and we'll look at other expansion opportunities, and then wrap up with some of the lessons that we learned in going throughout this project. Rockwell Automation, as mentioned, is headquarters in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we're the world's largest company dedicated to industrial automation and information systems. We have two key business components, the architecture and software division, and we have a control products and solutions division. Some of our markets served are heavy natural resources and heavy industry for gas, oil, mining, paper, etc. We also play in the consumer products area, food and beverage, also work with the automotive industry as well as OEMs. Most recently we're about $6 billion in sales, and we have 21,000 employees located in 80 countries around the world. We currently have regional shared service centers in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in Poland, as well as in Shanghai, China. And as I already mentioned, our global ERP platform is SAP. Why did Rockwell Automation start looking for a document managing solution? Basically, we're looking at implementing an automated processing solution to drive increased productivity, specifically for the accounts payable function. In looking at this project, we were really looking for a best-of-breed application. We already had a homegrown legacy application for document retention, for invoice processing, but we really needed to up the level of ability there and look for a best-of-breed application. We also were looking for assistance with compliance for tax regulation and document retention procedures, not only for North America, but for our global processes. And also we're looking for an application that would facilitate our regional and global shared service model, trying to get away from some of the movement of paper from location to location. Again, we're broadly dispersed around the globe. In order to do that, we really needed to have more of that best-of-breed document retention system and workflow capabilities to move the process forward. For our project specifically, we did engage several different areas. So we did have the accounts payable management team heavily engaged in driving this project, and as such also brought in our subject matter experts both from the AP department as well as our vendor master data area. Again, with our ERP system being SAP, we also had to leverage that area, so engaging our finance technical lead as well as subject matter experts in our IT area for infrastructure, for database administration and security. We also are heavily engaging with a project manager in the IT, and then with the SAP deployment team bringing in both functional as well as technical resources to assist with the overall design. Application administrators, we also engaged the services of a Lean Six Sigma project manager as we went through the workflow process and ensuring that we had the best solution and process in development for this particular application. We also did engage the resources of an external consultant and a reseller of the applications. What were our key project objectives? Our number one objective for this project was really about reducing our finance cost structure. We're also looking for, again, as mentioned, a more robust invoice storage platform. We're looking for an application that was both global, scalable, and mobile as we look to move work, again, around the globe. And one of our key initiatives for our SAP deployment project, which is a multi-year project that's still in process, is to standardize our processes globally as we roll out that application from region to region. So it was very critical when we looked at this accounts payable project. We also took that as a key initiative and objective of the project. Also, with SAP being our key ERP system, it was very important that we integrated with that. The functionality we were looking for didn't exist to our needs, but it was very important that we did have tight integration with our SAP solution. Some of the other objectives of the project was also to enhance our control environment and then also to support our legacy application processing as well as our strategies to decommission those legacy systems as we continue to deploy the SAP ERP system. An overview of accounts payable for our North American operations, which really involves processing for Canada, for the U.S., Dominican Republic, and some of our facilities in Mexico. We currently manage about 1.5 million invoices per year. That represents over $3 billion in spend. We are a heavy PO facility, so approximately 86% of our volume is processed with a purchase order. In addition to SAP, we have 5 other business systems that we need to support. Some of those systems, again, will go away as we transition to SAP. And then also an important point to note for our particular environment is that we were partially automated prior to engaging in this imaging and workflow solution through the use of EDI processing. We also have a legal invoice processing system that sits out of SAP and out of this application but interfaces with SAP. We're also going down the path of the S&C or supplier network collaboration within the SAP portal functionality for a true e-invoicing process. So presentment of the purchase order, working it through the P2P process to an invoice that's presented electronically and interfacing directly within the systems for a touchless process. And then to the extent that we do have some high-volume vendors that would not fit with EDI processing, we also look to leverage upload capabilities. Again, this was prior to the AP imaging solution. We were approximately 40% automated. A year into the project or into the deployment phase, we're sitting at about the mid-80% as far as our automation today. The components for this particular solution, again, is OnBase, brought to us by Hyland Software. So really looking for that world-class enterprise content management system for both document retention, but also leveraging the workflow capabilities of that tool. The second part of our solution is brought to us by Brainware, specifically the Brainware distiller process. We felt that this particular application was a good fit to the solution because of its high degree of field extraction rates and then the ability for the detailed PO line item matching, specifically with SAP purchase orders, to facilitate our high purchase order-based processing volume. Again, Brainware is an optical recognition or intelligent data capture solution. And then, as I mentioned previously, these two applications will also work with the SAP ERP system very tightly. From a project timeline perspective, we initiated this project in September of 2009 with those vendor selections. We then initiated the project with a blueprinting process. We completed that in January of 2010, and then approximately 10 months later we went live with a pilot process from the PO invoice processing perspective. And then a couple of short months later we actually took the project completely live for most of our North American processing for processing of purchase order invoices. At that same time, we did embark upon a rather lengthy pilot process for non-purchase order invoices where we were heavily engaging the workflow capabilities of the tool. We did go live with that part of the project in July of 2011. So we've been live from approximately 7 months now for non-purchase order. And then more recently, we did take this application and deployed it within our European Regional Shared Service Center in Poland for processing both purchase order and non-purchase order invoices. This next slide here talks to the complexity of this project, and I'm not going to go through this as a chart, but I just wanted to show that this is a fairly complex process. Accounts payable as a function is fairly simplistic, but when you do engage these applications, and specifically the Brainware working with OnBase and then the integration with SAP, we did end up with a fairly complex process. The slide that I'd like to present to our users, however, is much more simple. Again, there's three key components: the OnBase storage and workflow capabilities, the Brainware intelligence data extraction, SAP functionality, all three systems working jointly together to process our invoices. How does the application interface and integrate with SAP? Again, one of our key objectives was to leverage the SAP system from a process perspective as well as our global data. On the HR area or HCM, we're looking to leverage, or we have leveraged, the storing of decision authority, so the discretionary spend levels within our organization that's maintained within the SAP HR systems. We're also leveraging our org structure within the application. So when we look for that non-purchase order workflow capability and routing of invoices throughout the organization, we've got that data to use. On the supply chain side, again, heavily integrated for picking up vendor master information, the vendor details, the terms, payment methods, etc. And then we also, the system talks back and forth with SAP for purchase order data, so we can compare the data that's extracted via the OCR tool to do that PO line item pairing process. We also leverage the business workplace within SAP, so supporting the overall workflow within Business Workplace. We can park transactions that aren't completely posted into SAP. And then on the back end, we do have an archive link. So if a cost center manager is reviewing transactional detail within the SAP application, they've got the ability to click on a link to bring up a copy of that image that's stored within the OnBase application. Some of the project or process highlights. So our project really starts with the centralized receipt of invoices, and this will be true for each of our regional shared service centers. As we receive those invoices via hard copy, via mail, via email, also via fax, we capture those into the OnBase application. So we initially scan those in the front end of the process. At that point, the Brainware distiller, the intelligence data extraction occurs. So we lift the information off those invoices with respect to both the purchase order as well as non-PO invoices. And then from an automation perspective, so on the PO side, capturing the data that was extracted from the invoices by Brainware, leveraging the data that we pulled from SAP for the purchase order line item detail, we start that PO line item extraction and pairing process within Brainware. From a non-PO perspective, the automation kicks in with the workflow, so again, utilizing the data extracted on those invoices. What was the approving manager's name or email address? What is the vendor information? So we capture that information and then engage that document into workflow to push it out for the invoice coding and the approval process. Again, we do have automation with respect to decision authority processes. So once an approving manager codes and approves that invoice, then the system will automatically check for that right decision authority level. And if that particular individual does not have the correct level, we will find the person within the organization that has the correct authority level and then automatically route that via workflow to that individual for the final approval. We've automated the tax and freight handling decisions. So within Rockwell, we do have a consolidated freight program. So utilizing some of the rule sets and the processes we've defined in the front end, utilizing the workflow and the rule sets to automate some of those decisions within the application. We also looked at the utility process. So another key area where you've got, you want to quickly turn around those invoices, so we've got a process designed to capture the information, route it to a specific queue for processing so we can manage that queue. And then we do a passive approval on the back end so we're still compliant from a DA or decision authority process, but we do that on the back end to ensure a quick turnaround time, payment time for those invoices. On the back end of all of these processes, we do have automatic posting into SAP for both the purchase order as well as the non-purchase order related invoices. And then as I mentioned, we have a hot link or an archive link to that invoice image from within the posted transaction level within SAP, either in the financial documents for a non-PO invoice or within the material area for purchase order related invoices. We're also leveraging workflow and e-forms, or the standardized forms within the OnBase application for some of the AP-driven processes, including vendor maintenance, check or payment requests. And we've also developed a process here with an e-form and workflow to deal with issue resolution, so that the customer service type aspect, whether it's external calls coming to the accounts payable department or if it's internal within Rockwell Automation, trying to drive some of those issues to resolution. Or, for example, when we have a purchase order invoice, the PO number doesn't match our PO information in SAP, so we can use that to within the workflow and the e-form to capture that issue and get it over to the procurement organization to help us resolve some of those issues. Some of the key benefits, the financial benefits, again, our initial objective was to lower our processing cost. We were already doing quite well as an organization with the level of automation we had, but through this application, in conjunction with our activities, really driving to world-class performance. Through this application, we've also enhanced the ability to reduce our duplicate payments. There is functionality within our legacy systems within SAP to minimize duplicate payments, but this particular application, because we can look more broadly across different regions, different company codes within our regions, we can have a more enhanced process and a workflow-driven process to review and to reduce those duplicate payment opportunities. Because we capture the invoices on the front end, we don't have documents sitting on a coordinator's desk or in a cabinet. We have experienced a reduction of our lost invoices. Ultimately, we also want to improve our pay-on-time performance with this application and the workflow-driven processes. And then through the improved pay-on-time performance, it will also allow us to increase our discounts taken. From a non-financial perspective, and I've touched on some of these already, but we want to improve our internal control and regulatory compliance. We have the direct link to the invoice images within SAP. And from an AP management perspective and a finance perspective, we have much more visibility into the workflow, the document flow, the existing outstanding liabilities, everything that's in process. We now have visibility to all of that work that's currently sitting within the function. Through the different tools, both within OnBase as well as Brainware, we have enhanced reporting capabilities, looking at extraction rates and first pass yield, end-to-end as we optimize these processes through this solution. Again, through driving improved pay on time, also improving our customer service function. And then a key initiative for us also is to ensure that as we continue to roll this out as a global application, that we standardize our processes. And through this application, this is really driving this rollout of that standard global process. Ultimately, what we're doing here from an accounts payable perspective is shifting that focus from the manual, tedious data entry process into more of a value-added activities as a function. Within the realm of OnBase, we are looking at other expansion opportunities, and in fact, we've already, in March of 2011, we launched an application in our order intake process. So within our European arena, using the same solutions, OnBase as well as Brainware, to really drive efficient order processing. So it's the order intake process. Again, using the OCR process as well as OnBase to capture that information in an open format, and also really to help us drive earlier and enhanced reporting about that order intake process. We are also looking to expand with one or other of these solutions in the realm of SAP master data maintenance. We're embarking right now on a project looking at travel and expense reporting, so we can capture the images of expense reports and receipts, integrating that with SAP eventually, but then again looking to leverage this as a global scalable process as we deploy SAP around the globe. Intercompany invoicing is another area we're looking at relative to non-purchase order invoices and account reconciliation. So through the use of e-forms and through workflow capabilities in OnBase, again, we've got an opportunity to expand beyond the AP function into a whole different area of benefits for the organization. Some of the challenges and lessons that we did learn going through this process. Number one on the list was that we need to have internal IT resources that are fully engaged, both to develop the application as well as to support the application to realize its full potential. Our struggle within Rockwell, because of our multi-year SAP deployment project, a lot of our resources are heavily engaged in that project, so we did have to beg, borrow, and steal resources, and again, one of the key things is really to make sure they're engaged from the start of the process on the development side, because they are going to also have to support the process after you go live. Another lesson learned here was that, again, through the ECM systems, the OCR systems, they do require a degree of ongoing maintenance and development to realize that full potential benefit. So, for example, on the optical character recognition side, out of the box, the application is going to read information off of invoices quite well, but it's not going to read all of the invoices. It's not going to read all of the formats. So you need to look and work within that tool to help leverage the benefits that it can drive to get further expansion or further extraction with certain vendors. On the ECM side, workflow, again, another lesson learned here is that you deploy it thinking you know what you're looking for, but the reality is after you get it live a few months after that process, you also need to take a look back at the process and do a check to make sure that you have the most efficient workflow capability that you can have with the solution. One of the challenges that we faced also, in addition to the IT side, was having the adequate business resources to both coordinate as well as execute the testing of the application. We did not add resources to do this, but tried to leverage the existing resources we had. But again, it's a challenging process, and because of the tight integration with the SAP application and the integration between the OCR tool and the enterprise content tool, it took a fair amount of testing to get through the process. We also needed to plan for more extended support after that go-live period. So again, we deployed a project, but now we're looking at it saying, okay, how can we optimize that workflow? What's not working quite correctly in order to drive that productivity out of this process? Like any project, also the change management activities, both internal, so within Rockwell, as well as external in our supply chain, planning for extensive change management activities. This is something that we did do in the front end, but one of the lessons learned also is AP, again, is a fairly simplistic function, even though you do your internal communication around this process. It is a little bit of a different web-based environment, and it does take users some time to get used to things. So it's not only change management on the front of the process, but ongoing change management activities to ensure, again, you get the productivity and the accuracy out of this process. Also, again, because this is another web-based environment, so we do have infrastructure as well as other web-based environment challenges within our organization. Every organization is different, so how those organizations and your infrastructure works with both of those applications is just something that you have to work through as a project. So I've touched on the standard global process objective for the organization, but really in summary, looking at what we have here with the OnBase enterprise content management, the workflow, as well as the OCR process, we do, in my mind, really, we've leveraged both technology and process change to drive a true global process transformation. When we deploy SAP as an ERP system, one of our key initiatives was to, again, drive that global standardized processes, but really through the two technologies employing here with OnBase as well as Brainware, we're taking that to another level of efficiency and true global process transformation. Becca, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Paul, for taking the time to share with us Rockwell's story today. I think it really is a powerful story. Absolutely, I think you summarized it very well about how you can leverage technology and the best practices you have as an organization to really transform your business processes. Before we get to the Q&A question period, I just wanted to take a couple minutes just to tell everybody about Hyland Software. As Paul mentioned throughout his presentation, Hyland Software produces a product called OnBase, and as that product, we provide enterprise content management services to our clients. So we are a recognized leader in the enterprise content management space. We've been in business for over 20 years, and as an organization, we are 100% focused on enterprise content management. We have over 1,200 employees located in several offices around the world, and we have over 10,500 customers located in 61 countries. So we really do have a worldwide presence, as Paul shared in his presentation with some of their international locations. They're getting up to speed, and we have a support really around the world for our customers. So we are aligned as a company by industries. So we have very strong subject matter knowledge and depth of experience in our core industries that we support, which include manufacturing, insurance, healthcare, higher education, government, and financial services, really to name a few. But what is enterprise content management? I think Paul did a great job in his presentation talking about really how they've leveraged enterprise content management within the organization. And in really the big picture, what it does is provide access to documents and content faster. It's going to automate those business processes through workflow, and it's also going to streamline your compliance efforts. So as an organization, it's really a step towards operating efficiency and reducing some of the non-value-added activities that can be associated with manual paper-based processes. As a solution, we scale across departments and across the globe. I think Paul touched on that a little bit too when he talked about some of the expansion efforts Rockwell's seen. But you know, as an example, starting in accounts payable, but then being able to take that exact same solution and going across departments like human resources, like you know, contract management, accounts receivable, you know, even into operational areas and some of the compliance initiatives we talked about. So it's really a platform that can be used to leverage the document management needs of an enterprise. And then the workflow and the business process automation we provide can be tailored to meet the needs of those specific departments. We do provide choices to our customers, so we have 3 choices in terms of deployment of our solution. There's an on-premise option, we offer a hosted option, and then we also have a fully SaaS model for customers that want to take advantage of that. And from a corporate strategy perspective, this is something that I think really differentiates Hyland as an organization, and our customer really come first. And that's a strategy that we all hold very near and dear to our hearts and take it very seriously, is really putting our customers first. As a result, 98% of our customers renew maintenance year over year. So we have happy customers that continue to renew maintenance and continue to expand their OnBase solutions across their organization because of the power that they see it can bring. At this point, I know that we've had some questions along the way. I wanted to make that point short, but again, I'd like to thank Paul for your time today and sharing the Rockwell Automation story, and I will go ahead and turn it over for questions.
All right, thank you, Becca and Paul. That was a great presentation. And our first question, it comes from Peter. Steve, have other departments within Rockwell looked into using OnBase for other departments?
We are looking at expansion opportunities, as I've already mentioned. We did deploy a solution within our sales organization for our order intake process in our European arena. As an organization, I think there's all kinds of opportunities for this particular application to grow. And one of my challenges is again, getting the application support. The more that we can build a base within Rockwell, the more we can leverage the functionality and the power of this application. Primarily right now we see use within the finance area, but again, it has already expanded to our sales organization, and I have no doubt that it will continue to grow across the organization with more success that we're experiencing both in AP as well as our sales organization.
Great, thank you. And our next question, is OnBase a solution that can span across multiple departments?
Yeah, you know, I think that I was able to touch on that a little bit at the end, and Paul did as well, but certainly it is. So we talk about OnBase really being a platform that organizations can leverage across the enterprise, like I said, to meet the needs of multiple departments. So it's definitely scalable.
Thank you. And our next question is from Arlie, and I think it's for Paul. Arlie wants to know if you've noticed the positive change in your employees' productivity after implementing OnBase, then how did implementation went with the employees?
So I think that the question is two areas of focus. One is the back office and the AP function, as well as the employees across the organization that are using this tool. We have experienced some productivity gains within the AP function itself. I will say that we're also in this optimization mode as we've looked at what we've designed, and we do need to continually look at how we can make processes more efficient. Again, it's one of those things where you don't quite know what you have until you've got it, and you work it through, and then you find where your pinpoints are and your pain points, and then you go back in and you can fairly easily modify your workflow to optimize those performances. From an employee perspective, the system is fairly easy to use. So when we do route invoice out for coding and approval, we have the ability to present via email a link out to the actual invoice image within OnBase, as well as to a coding form. Some of the challenges, again, I think in this fast-paced world that we do live in as employees, we try to do the change management and the training in the front end of a process. And the individuals that went through the training and that we've been able to reach have been very successful using this application. You're always going to find some employees within an organization that are reluctant to change, or they don't think they need to participate in training, and therefore they may struggle with the application. But generally, we are seeing it as well received with the deployment within our European region. And our objective within the accounts payable function as a global business process owner is to continue to roll this around the world. But within the deployment for Europe, we are getting very favorable feedback for the functionality that this application does provide. Our next step beyond Europe will be to take this into the Asia-Pacific region in the next 6 to 9 months. There's a big need there for both the workflow functionality that OnBase can bring to the organization, as well as that document storage platform that they don't have today. So I'm doing everything I can to prepare for the next deployment, but the regions are also doing everything they can to try to put it first on my priority lists every day.
Thank you, Paul. And we have time for just a few more questions. Our next question comes from Deborah, and she asks, if and how this implementation has affected invoice turnaround from receipt to payment?
I think I'll need to break it down into 2 areas. From a PO perspective, we're seeing about the same turnaround time with the application as we did before the application. But what we're actually seeing going on there is what constrains us from a invoice receipt to payment side on the PO area is really match exception issues. And in this organization, we're getting fairly complex in our procurement procedures, and we deal with that. So really the constraint there is not the application, but some of the external factors that come into play with that process. From a non-PO perspective, there's instances where it's extremely efficient, and you can monitor this and you can see this within the reporting functionality looking at the tool. So we are seeing an improvement there with a good chunk of the invoices that are processed from a non-PO perspective, although we do have challenges both externally. So one of the keys to making this particular process efficient is to capture the approver's name or email address on the invoice, and we do see a fair amount of vendors that are still sending in invoices without that information. And then we also are going through the growing pains within the organization for, again, that population that has a hard time dealing with the change management. Ultimately, we're still, the performance is about the same as it was prior to the deployment of the solution. But again, we're just embarking in that process efficiency, the retraining and education of employees across the organization, as well as working externally with our supply chain to drive better compliance. And ultimately, I have no doubt that we will improve the productivity of the process.
Thank you, Paul. And our final question for this program comes from Jeff, and he asks, what ERPs OnBase can work with, and what reporting is available to ensure timely approval of invoices by the department's approvers?
Thanks, Kelly. I think I'll take this one. And again, probably 2 points to this question. First, talking about what ERP systems OnBase can work with. SAP is one of the ones we mentioned in today's program, but OnBase has the ability to integrate with a wide variety of other ERP systems, including Oracle, PeopleSoft, SAP, Lawson, just to name a few, but we have a whole host that we've integrated with. We have a lot of experience there, and in fact, most of our customers leverage some degree, if not a full degree, of integration with their ERP systems during their deployment. From a reporting perspective, we provide a lot of different abilities for our customers to get real-time reporting, to be able to take timely action for the approval of invoices, and by department from an approval perspective. So the workflow tool that Paul mentioned is one of the great ways that we provide visibility into the status of where an invoice, for example, is in that workflow. So we can look for load balancing as an example, and to make sure nothing gets stuck in any kind of bottleneck if someone may be out of the office or something along those lines. Then we also provide reporting again, in a variety of ways where we can customize reports, and we have dashboards available as well to provide a bigger picture perspective on where things are from an invoice perspective and from other processes within the software.
Great. Thank you, Becca and Paul. And that's all the time we have for today's program. Again, if you have any other questions for any one of the presenters, please email those to amotuz@theapchannel.com. This presentation was brought to you by the Accounts Payable Channel and Hyland Software. This webinar earns 1 CEU credit for the Accounts Payable Certification Program. The program is copyrighted 2012 by the Accounts Payable Channel, all rights reserved. Have a great day, everyone.